this is the first time where we've like spent some time with Matt now, who we've been hearing as Teviran, but like he's kind of been sidelined for most of the series. But now we're starting to see he's blown the horn, which we knew about. But like this luck thing really starts to come into play. Like he's always been lucky, but this is a whole different kind of luck.
I thought it was going to be like he's lucky some of the time. He's lucky all of the time.
Welcome, friends, to episode 342 of the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And this week we discuss Robert Jordan's 1991 novel, The Dragon Reborn. So, James, we are back with The Wheel of Time. This is a show that we have covered 2 seasons of, 2 books of, and now we're bringing in a 3rd book. And it's kind of a weird spot because this book, at least from what we'd been hearing, was like partially adapted into the season we've already seen, but is partially being adapted into this upcoming season we're going to be tackling, as well as book 4. So we're just knocking out the whole book in one go here, and we'll see how that works. But I'm definitely interested to hear, because if you haven't been following along, James has never read The Wheel of Time, watching the show for the first time, so this is his first experience with this, whereas I have, it's a series I read growing up. So really excited to talk to you and find out what you thought of this 3rd book.
Yeah, and we're both admittedly like massive fantasy fans. Like what really got me into reading growing up was fantasy, and this was one that like I was in the process of possibly reading, and then we started the podcast, and then we knew that this might be adapted at some point.
Like, wait.
It is being adapted. So here we are, back at Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, which I just like I'm having so much fun with, because Eye of the World starts out with like a fairly familiar sort of fantasy
Tolkien-esque,
story,
you might call it.
Yeah. And then I like to see Jordan kind of coming into his own as we're getting through a couple more books now. The Great Hunt was like a, kind of a fun fantasy romp of like an adventure with a quest that they're trying to achieve. And then now the world's like broadening out some, and we're starting to see some of like the different factions and the political sort of side to some of the things. And honestly, I'm really enjoying seeing a lot of the side characters get to shine a lot. This book is called The Dragon Reborn. Not that much about the Dragon Reborn. It's like, I like that he's kind of a device in the story, more than he is like the driving force in this one.
That's one of the biggest departures so far in the series is Rand. For the first time, Rand is not a POV character that we get much of. We get a little bit of him here or there. And we hear about him doing stuff. He's someone that everybody's looking for. He's doing things, but like he's not the POVs. This is much more Egwene, Perrin, and Matt heavy book. And like I love all those characters, so
that's something we've addressed in past episodes as well. As like Luke has his book reader pronunciations, and then I listen to the audiobook and read at the same time. So I say Egwene. But you've said Egwene since you were a kid, right? So
yeah, I'm gonna go back and forth between my like pronunciations I grew up with in my head and like what I have heard the show / audiobook assert is right. Usually it's whenever I'm not thinking about it. So yes, I apologize for that. We all know who we're talking about. But if anybody else has read the book and not like listened to the audio or seen the show, they know what I mean when it's like a lot of these pronunciations, you're just going to come up with something in your head and it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, so Rand is a much smaller part of this book, even though his like presence obviously is still central. And we get to spend a lot more time with Perrin. We get to spend a lot more time with Matt, which is a big change from the last couple of books. He's been like sort of struggling with his dagger affliction for a while now, and he gets to come into his own a little more here.
That was the thing where Matt, I was like, everybody talks about how much they love Matt, and I'm like, I like sort of some of the hijinks that he finds himself in the first book or so, but then he's like fully corrupted by this
quickly
dagger.
Sidelined.
And then finally this is the book where I'm like, I'm starting to get it. All right, okay. I like Matt.
I
liked him before, but I'm starting to understand why, and like his effect in the story is really fun. We can get into that.
Yeah, he's definitely kind of comic relief at times. He's a fun character for sure. So yeah, we're gonna go through. If you are a show-only watcher, there may be some spoilers in here. I don't know. We haven't seen the new season yet. But we're going to go through the plot of book 3, which is, like I said, it's kind of this weird book where it's like kind of being adapted, kind of isn't. So just be aware, like, I don't know what this may or may not spoil for the 3rd season of the show. But we're going to go through recap what happens in the book. If you're like me and you read this book a long time ago, other than I just read it just now, but like it would be nice to hear a plot summary, I think. So we're going to go through that so everybody can kind of remember, oh, what is this book and what happens in this book? And we'll go over that, and then we'll dive into it. And I'm honestly going to be leaning on James a lot just to like find out his reactions to things. What maybe he thinks is going to happen going forward is always fun to talk about.
Yeah, let me predict a 14-book series
yeah.
when I'm at book 3.
All right, so yeah, if you're cool, I'm just going to jump right into the first chunk of plot here, and we can dive right into this story. If you want to hear more about Robert Jordan, by the way, as an author, you have to go all the way back to our first episode where we covered The Eye of the World. We talk about more of him as an author and like what went on with him. But we're just going to kind of jump right into it, I think. So Rand al'Thor, having appeared in the sky at the Battle of Falm in the Great Hunt. Follow me, Falm,
I believe.
Falm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe.
I'm realizing I'm about to have to pronounce a lot of shit. It's going to be tough. Rand al'Thor, having appeared in the sky at the Battle of Falm in the Great Hunt, quarrels with various members of his party, including Moiraine, and secretly leaves the Shannara camp in the Mountains of Mist. His destination is Tyr, where he will prove himself the dragon reborn by fulfilling the prophecy concerning the taking of the Stone of Tyr and obtaining Kalandor. On the way to Tyr, he is followed by Dark Friends and Dark Hounds, and causes several Taviran events that allow the others to track him. Min has left the camp by order of Moiraine to report to the Amyrlin on what has transpired. Moiraine, Lan, Loyal, Perrin chase after Rand. Along the way, they encounter a hunter for the horn, Fail Bashir, battle Darkhounds, and discover the Forsaken Samael rules in Ilion. Okay, so that's the first chunk here. It's a lot of book, but I just want to get your reaction to being back in the world of Wheel of Time, back with these characters. We get a couple new kinds of dark friends or dark, what are they called? Like Shadow Spawn? Shadow Spawn. We get a couple new kinds with the Gray Men, which aren't mentioned here. We get the introduction of the Gray Men, and then we also get the Dark Hounds. What did you think of those?
Well, let's start by saying I had to do an extensive recap because they're large fantasy books, big world.
Dude, imagine reading one book every year, and then like you get to like book fucking 10, and you're like, what the hell happened back in the start of the series? It was 10 years ago.
Read other series like that, but this is like such a
there's so much
one,
that happens, and there's so many characters.
That's the main thing too. It's like the plots I can really kind of remember fairly well, but it's all the specifics of the characters. And he introduces every single innkeeper. Everywhere we're going, it's an inn. It's the name of a ship. It's the name of a horse. It's the name. You know what I mean? It's like all of those things. And I'm actually reveling in it. Like I love that, but it does like leave a lot of names floating around in your head.
It sure does. Yeah, it's a lot of rich detail, but definitely someone who's like read a lot of other stuff now and come back to it. Like, he hits you with so many proper nouns and so much world building, and it is like rich and it's immersive. So that's kind of the bonus of it. But like definitely the drawback is it's overwhelming and kind of hard to remember it all.
But I can also see people being like experts and being like, this ship,
if you want to get into it.
You know, this ship that they took from this place to this place and like all the locations. Like I find myself pulling out the map often. Like they have interactive maps that show like what's happening in what books. And like that's the kind of stuff that I have to sink my teeth into because as a reader, like I need to know what's happening and I need to like comprehend it all. I can't just like go off of vibes.
I wanted to know like, so real quick, what was your experience reading this? Because I know you listened to the audiobook and you were traveling recently.
I was, yeah.
Were you listening to this while traveling?
Yeah, I was on planes. I was snowboarding down a mountain at one point, and I had one earphone in, and I was just listening for a little while. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I found ways to read this book, and honestly, I like to do that when I travel, and just in general, I think we've talked about it on the podcast quite a bit, but when we're covering a project, I usually tie that time around when I'm reading the book or watching the show. I tie that to like a point in my life, so it's cool that like this will always be tied to that trip that I just took. And anyway, I found like, you know, planes, trains, and automobiles. I found ways to listen / read this book, and reference the wiki. Yeah. And look at interactive maps and stuff like that as much as possible. So
yeah, so let's touch on a couple of these proper nouns that we introduced in this plot summary here. We've returned to Min. We've returned to Moiraine in the group. Rand has sort of departed from this group to go off on his own, and we see that he is like talking to himself more. maybe seems like he's losing it a little bit. But also like maybe he's just like talking with the Dark One, and like it's unclear like how real any of it is.
Luz Telamon is like the main point that we're thinking about constantly. Like he's possibly going mad. He's going to turn into a Theron Telamon. So we need to be careful of that. He's like starting to lose himself a little bit. He's talking to himself about not falling into the darkness, and this book does a heavy job of introducing a lot of these like dream elements and the prophecies and how everything like folds in. And
we got to talk about the world of dreams, which I always struggle to pronounce. It's like Telon Riyad or something. I have it written somewhere.
Teleron Riyad.
What did you think of the world of dreams? Because so this is like something we've touched on a little bit, but this is the book to me that starts to codify the rules of this world, how it works, what powers you have, like what dangers exist, and who is like particularly adept at this world, which we find out that both Perrin, in his own way with these wolf dreams, and then Egwene is also quite adept because she's something called a dreamer. And then she gets a Terangriel, which allows her to enter this world like more fully. What are your thoughts on this? Because I think this is kind of a divisive plot for people, because people don't like reading about dreams.
Yeah.
However, this, like, Robert Jordan does a lot to make the dreams feel like they are important. They have actual stakes to them. You can achieve actual things in them. You can communicate. So, like, they're not just normal dreams. But you could argue we spend a lot of time in the dream world. And how do you feel about it?
I think that knowing kind of what I've seen so far with Jordan and seeing characters like Min and seeing these characters jump into the dream world, I almost always know that those dreams and things that they're seeing are prophecies that are going to come true.
There's tons of prophecies going on all the time, right?
But I'm almost 100% of the time, and I don't know this for sure. Maybe he throws some red herrings in there, but I'm almost every single time like, okay, that's going to happen, and that's going to happen, and that's going to happen.
Speaking of which, I forget how much we knew in the book, but like Min was talking about how like she's going to be supposed to be with the Dragon Reborn with 3 other women or 2 other women.
I think we have talked about this in the past because it was mentioned at some point.
She's gonna have to share him and all this stuff.
It's weird, and I think that it's going to be something that's divisive for sure.
Do we have a current update on who you think those 3 are?
Oh, I don't know. Well, Min.
Okay, yeah.
But I think Min. I've always said Egwene. I think this does a little bit. This book does an interesting thing where like she's kind of like looking at him wistfully and keeps being like, oh, what could have been? And so now I'm starting to think like, is this not going to happen? But I do think like at the end of a fantasy story like this, you are going to get him with Egwene in some way. But there's 3 women, so it's like this whole wish fulfillment thing that I feel conflicted about reading.
Do you have a theory on who the 3rd is then?
3. I think we talked about the princess.
Yeah, Elaine.
Elaine, yeah.
Who is like in this book, but she's not a POV character very much, but like maybe at all. But she's present for a lot of things for sure. And she definitely has had this past where she had like a flirtatious encounter with Rand, and he seemed to like her too. So that's someone that's been set up, I think.
And she definitely gets way more to do in this story, and I feel like now I understand her as a character, whereas before she kind of just showed up. And like I like her. I like how she plays between like Nynaeve and Egwene, and the way that like she also has like her own struggles with like the political intrigue of like she's the on the throne basically.
She's got a certain knowledge base outside of theirs because she's more worldly. Like she grew up in a city. She's not as like from the country as them, but on the other hand, she is a little bit removed from that kind of stuff and not as grounded. So they kind of fill in each other's areas where they're not as experienced. So I like the way that works. And
I do like that they are like a sisterhood that like has each other's back. Like that's one of the coolest things to me about like we get so much more of the Aes Sedai here. I always felt like they were going to be kind of like almost because in the first few books they were kind of like just like seeking out men and like gentling them whenever they were showing any channeling, and then it started to turn into like, oh no, like I'm invested in all of their plot lines, and I love the what they have going on.
So we're about to get to Tar Valon. That's our next section here, but I wanted to focus in here on Fail, who's one of the Hunters of the Horn, who's introduced here. Of course, like she's just introduced at the start, but we get a whole plot with her, getting to know Perrin, What were your thoughts on this character? How do you like her?
By the end, I liked her. At first, I thought she was going to be a character that just like showed up and went away, like a lot of Jordan's characters. But there's that sort of like look that she and Perrin share that like you're like, oh shit, like this could be something serious. And by the end of it, I'm like, oh, are they an item now? Like they seem to be like staring into each other's eyes by the end of the book. So we can talk more about that. One thing I want to note too is like you mentioned the gray men and the dark hounds, and like I like that, like the hounds with Perrin, for example, like since we're talking about him, I like Perrin even more now. I'm like that he's like diving into these dreams. I like that he's like resisting the wolves, and like by the end of the story he's like no longer resisting, and he's like, I am a wolf. He becomes a wolf to save her in a sense.
Yeah, so we got the reemergence of Hopper, who died previously, but now he's like Dream Hopper.
I thought Hopper was like gone from the story, and I was like, he's gonna be the motivation.
But now
for
Hopper
him
can fly.
And I'm like, holy shit, Hopper is back. I'm like, no wonder people like Hopper. Like I'm all the way back.
He's
a
dream wolf who can like literally fly to the sky.
and he's always like giving him the best advice. He's like, just get the fuck out of here, man. He's like, you don't want this.
He guards him. He's like, you don't want to be here. But then Perrin's like, I do want to be here. And he's like, all right, then let's do it.
All right, let's fucking ride. And they like run together as wolves, and it's cool. I like that Perrin's kind of got more going on now, and
he's kind of like a guide for him in these wolf dreams, this dream world. And this is something that Egwene doesn't really know about. At one point they do interact in the dream world, but
a lot of people do.
They don't really, neither of them really know that it's actually the other person and not just like a figment or a dark shadow spawn being sent to them to like. Anyway, so there's a lot of mystery going on, but we get both sides of it, so we know that they are actually interacting. But neither of them really know of each other's power in the dream world yet.
And I like that too, because you were mentioning before like why people maybe like or don't like the dream world, and I like it because if you're gonna have this sprawling world, it's cool to be able to have the characters still interact when they're so far apart, having their own storylines going on.
Yeah, it does enable like a shortening of distance with people. Yeah, and so the rules are a little funny, and it seems to reflect like. There's some talk about it reflecting possible worlds. It's like this multiverse stuff, and it's like, oh, things that could have happened are sometimes in the dream world. But then it's unclear because I've always felt like there is like, and maybe this is fully outlined at one point, but like there is the dream world, and then there is actual dreams. And they're actually kind of separate things, and it's like actual dreams sometimes get into the dream world, but not always. And like actual dreams, I think, are more likely to be prophetic. Whereas like the dream world has certain rules around it, and like you can affect people who are in it, and like actually injure them and things like that.
And like dark ones often come to our main characters in the dream world trying to affect them, even though it's like a dream then turns into the dream world because they have infiltrated.
I like it overall, but like I do sometimes brush up against and find a little bit of like, I don't know. It's not annoying. It's just like sometimes it's hard to pin down like what is the dream world, what isn't, like how does this actually work. And like he does a decent job of outlining rules, but he's trying to give rules to something that like by definition should feel kind of surreal and dreamlike, obviously, so he doesn't want to overdo it, and I get that too.
Weird shit happens where people are just like teleporting, or somebody gets ripped apart by the dream.
Objects are like changing as you're looking at them, like changing color and things like that, and then sometimes they don't, and it's like, what does that mean? Well, this one's more like fixed. What does that mean? Oh, so I wanted to say the dark hounds for me, they are definitely fearsome. They are very reminiscent of just sort of hellhounds to me, like from other books and sort of mythology and I don't know, the Bible or whatever. I don't know. Are they in the Bible? I don't know.
I don't know, man. Greek mythology.
I just think of like shows like Supernatural. It's like they're invisible. They leave like footprints in like stone and stuff. I think in this, and they're like very fearsome, and you have to fight them. That's fine. They're solid. The Gray Men are a really interesting concept to me. They are just like, they're kind of undead, but not. They're like men that aren't men or something. But then the whole thing is they're just like exceedingly forgettable to where like if you look at them, you just like won't note that they are a remarkable person in any way and that you should notice them. So they sort of escape everybody's notice unless you're like Perrin, who has like his wolf nose and he's able to sniff them out and say something's wrong with them. I don't know, interesting sort of concept, something that feels kind of different.
Yeah, I like that he keeps introducing like he's like hellhounds fodder. They're just gonna get fucking wrecked at all times. But I do like that, like what are they? The shadow hounds?
Yeah, they're like chasing Ren for a while. Yeah,
I like that they're also like a foil to pairing with his wolves in a sense. Like if he's got wolves, then they have the dark wolves, and they're gonna do battle in some way. But like it's so crazy to see like Rand and some of these other some of the Aes Sedai, like our Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine trio, like learn their powers, and then at some point they're just like, oh, yeah, this is like this thing called balefire that just like melts things out of existence, and like so that's what I think of when I think of one of the dogs or the hounds came close to Rand, and he's like, come at me, and then he just like eviscerates it with his blast of light.
So you've touched on something that is starting to happen a lot in this book in particular, and it's people sort of spontaneously remembering how to do things that they shouldn't know how to do, right? Like that's happened across multiple characters now. What are your thoughts on that? Like I mean, clearly this is something he's doing on purpose, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's because the wheel weaves as the wheel
right.
wills.
So this is the idea. Is this is like a return.
Yeah.
These characters have been like spit back out into the pattern. They are another incarnation of a previous person, and they're like starting to remember powers they had in like past lives or something.
I think that's how I'm justifying it. I also think that they are just like all like savants, basically. Like a lot of them are like the strongest.
Well, we do hear a lot about how like each of the women are the strongest ever, except for Nynaeve, who's even stronger than all of them, but she can only do stuff when she's angry.
Well, and she only needs to see it once. Like all of them are doing this thing where it's like if they see someone else do it, they can replicate it too, which I think is cool. So they're all like very quick to pick it up. And
Egwene actually just figures stuff out in her dreams sometimes that she's never seen. She's like, I just did it for the first time in a dream, and then now I can do it when I'm back in the waking world because I did it in a dream.
I like that, like with if you're gonna have somebody running around who's called the Dragon Reborn and he has like the ultimate touch on the taint. On Sidene, right?
Yeah.
Is it the Sidene is the male side? I like that if he's going to be all powerful, like so are a lot of our other characters, and like this is like the wheel is coming back around, and this is like the age of the beginning of a new age or end of an age.
I'm going to return to asking you about how you feel about our Taviran in a moment, but for now, let's get into this next section here. Mat Cauthon is taken to Tar Valon by Varen Mathwin, Nynaeve Almira, and Egwene Alvir, Elaine Tricond, and Huron. Immediately after arrival in Tar Valon, Huron departs to report to King Aesar Togita in Shinar, as well as his fellow Borderlanders, and the women skirmish with the Children of the Light before heading to the White Tower. The Amerlin seat, Suin Sanchi, sets Nynaeve and Egwene to the task of hunting down the Black Aja. Egwene and Nynaeve tell Elaine of their mission, and Elaine agrees to help them track down the Black Aja. A lead sends the trio traveling to Tyr. In the White Tower, through the use of the Sa'angriel by Aes Sedai, Mat is permanently healed of the corruptive influence of the Ruby Dagger of Shadar Logoth. Once healed, Mat defeats both Galad Damodrand and Gawain Tricond at the same time in a practice sword battle using merely a quarterstaff. This improbable victory wins him enough money to gamble with and escape from Tar Valon. Elaine entrusts Mat with a letter to her mother, Queen Morghese, explaining that she will be leaving the White Tower for some time. Mat finds Tom Merrilin in an inn. The pair escape Tar Valon together and travel to Andor, where Mat delivers the letter and learns of a plot by Queen Morghese's lover, Lord Gabriel, to murder Elaine, heir of Andor. Seeking to prevent that murder, Mat pursues the women who are already on their way to Tyr. All right, so this is a huge part of the book that we just flew through, but this opens us up to talking about, I think first, let's talk about all the stuff that's going on at Tar Valon. We see them continuing their journey into becoming further through the tower, I guess I'll say, but like they become accepted. I think Egwene and Elaine both become accepted.
Nynaeve already was.
Nynaeve already was. So we had previously seen her go through these arches and have her like little kind of tests that she goes through. The way back will only appear once and all that stuff. But now we see it with Egwene, and hers are a little different. Like, what were your thoughts on that sequence?
So this is something we got in season 2 of the show for Egwene, and I liked this a lot. I liked getting it again. I liked getting the emphasis on it again. But one thing that I think is notable is positioning it with something that I thought was really powerful in both the show and the previous book, and that's the Seanchan like taking Egwene and like collaring her and forcing her to use her powers.
Yeah, she's got some PTSD about that clearly in this book.
Totally. So these characters are going through it, and in the tower they're being like tortured with work and like chores and annoying stuff that they have to do, like humbling stuff. And also like
there's a lot of like diminishing and like calling them children, and then like once they become accepted, they become, I think, daughter or something instead of child. So they get treated like slightly differently, and it's clear that like they're only going to treat them as equals once they become Aes Sedai, if they become Aes Sedai.
But they have been punished because of the previous adventure that they went on, right, which actually saved the day.
Well, and they're flying through everything super fast, so people are jealous of it or don't think that it's right, that they should already be at this stage and all this stuff. Yeah.
But I think bringing all of that into what Egwene goes through in this book, and like her fear of being captured and her fear of being told what to do, basically, and like held in any sort of capacity, I think is like really built something interesting in her character that felt like it's like against type for her innocent streak that we saw her with early on. And then as she's gone through all this trauma, we're now seeing her come out the other side like this like scarred warrior kind of, and like we can see her like leaning towards the green Aja, which is cool.
I think very notably, I think it's the third test, because they're supposed to be like kind of like past, present, and future potentially. It's unclear whether or not these are things that are going to happen or might happen or happen in an alternate world. They kind of are kind of squishy with that, I think, on purpose. But in her future situation, she is being like pulled in front of a bunch of the Aes Sedai to be potentially have her position as Amyrlin's seat taken from her, because in this sort of future world, she is the Amyrlin. What do you think of that?
I'm like, oh, that seems like something that could happen for sure.
Yeah, she also finds out that she's from the green, which is interesting because it's like, then you get into the time thing of like, what if she ends up choosing the green because she saw this and saw that she was going to be a green? What does that mean? Right,
totally, yeah. This is the what is it, Terra Angriel? These arches, and like it's interesting that these are all built from like generations ago, and they don't know how they work, they don't know what they're made out of. And so like when the women come out of these arches, they're like was that some women like never come back because they feel like it's real and they want to stay there and everything.
Well, they don't know. It's a mystery what happens to them. That's a theory. Maybe that's what happened. Sometimes they just don't come out. Yeah,
and that's the crazy thing, is because they're just like at the end of it, everyone always comes out and they're like, what was that? What did I just turn my back on and everything like that? And they're like, we don't know.
Yeah,
that's the answer. So
it's kind of like, this is a test we've always done, and any knowledge about what it actually was maybe never known, or at the very least has been forgotten.
We get to see these alternate timelines possible, and they're also like kind of similar to what we see in some of the dreams.
Yeah, there's some alternate stuff too, where it's like a version where Egwene and Rand were like together and had never left the two rivers, right?
I think it's really interesting, and to talk about more of Tar-Valon, Swan, the Amyrlin seat.
Yeah,
I like her character a lot in the show, and I felt like a lot of the like her being from like a small fishing village and everything like that was threaded in so much in this book. And I love that like everything is always like seated around some metaphor, fishing, boat related.
You could argue he maybe overdoes it a little bit, but man, every single thing she compares is something to do with a fish.
I think he's a fisherman, right? Like he enjoyed fishing. Probably. I assume. I bet
he just made it. He like decided that whenever Suin talks or thinks, she's going to make a fucking sea-related, fish-related metaphor or analogy. I will say other people from that region, because later we get there, I think it's basically around Tyr, they also talk similarly, but it feels like it was particularly strong for her.
Yeah, and I actually think it's a fun character trait.
It is. And when you have a book with so many different people, it's nice to give somebody a way to stand out, so you can kind of know, like, oh, I'm in her POV, just from hearing her talk.
I also just like how she's from something very humble, and then she's very regal, and like the kind of juxtaposition of that.
Yeah, she's like the queen of the frickin' Aes Sedai, and yet she has these very humble beginnings. Yeah, I always thought that was kind of cool too. They get assigned a secret mission, right?
Yeah,
they're either they're in trouble because they left without permission and all this stuff, and they're like fake in trouble, but she's like, we're just gonna do it so everybody's not mad. But secretly, your mission is to like hunt the Black Aja, who are all full Aes Sedai, and they're a bunch of accepted, and it's like, it's pretty wild that she puts this on them, but they're so powerful, and they have these connections to obviously our main three dudes, that it's like they're very important. So that she entrusts them to do it. She's like, well, these are some of the only people that I can trust are like on the side of the dragon, which we know is like kind of been her mission with Moiraine. I think we know this more from the show, but it's definitely in the book too, that like they are all about the dragon. But this is the book where it's like revealed like the Black Aja is like in the tower. And doing shit,
trying to kill them at times, and there's like gray men that show up and shoot bolts, and then it turns out that wasn't the Greyman was like stabbed by a dagger. So there's people that definitely that are in the tower that are a danger to anybody who's in there. Yeah, I love that we got their mission. That all felt super intriguing to me.
It's kind of got that magic school appeal too, definitely. Right? Of like, yeah, you're going to class, kind of. You're getting taught lessons. You're getting more power unlocked. It's a staple in fantasy for a reason, and it's very fun.
And figure out how to take down the Dark One and his disciples while doing your classwork and your chores and all this other stuff.
Yeah. And like the dangers are very real because like they're actually have like infiltrated the school.
The other thing I really want to talk about that this has now led us to is Matt, because this is why they brought Matt back, and then he was being healed in the tower here, the White Tower. And I was like thinking, well, it's been such a long time of him being tainted. There's no way that he just like gets off scot-free from this dagger. And like, as far as this book leads me to believe, outside of his luck, he's pretty removed from the dagger at this point. They like have taken it from him. And I also love that like the coolest thing about Matt right now is that he's tied to the horn of the heroes, and how like they're like, we could have let you die, but we decided to heal you, and now you're going to be the one to blow the horn in the final battle and all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is fucking cool. And then I love that he's the type to be like, he's not the type to like lay down his life for someone else. He's just kind of there for, what's in it for me. And then we get to see kind of his long-term growth, I assume, is going to be to lay down his life or to be the kind of person who wants to protect everybody. And just because like I'm seeing that kind of build up in him with what he does with the women.
Like maybe a move towards being more selfless versus selfish.
And but like in the meantime, his selfish nature makes for a really fun character.
I find that mildly interesting. I don't know. What was my term for like when we're maybe touching on spoiler things, but I don't want to give it away?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember. I thought we had something, but yeah. So it's interesting to look at the Taviran, which by the way, in the show is a little different. I think Egwene is also one, maybe 90. I forget who all is in the show.
I think maybe all 5. Yeah,
maybe everybody is. Yeah. In the book, it's just the 3 dudes. It's Perrin, Matt, and Rand. And Rand, obviously, we all know why he is. He's like the strongest ever because he's the Dragon Reborn.
He's the chosen one.
To this point. He's the chosen one. But I always thought it was interesting. Okay, so we got Perrin and Matt. They both don't channel. So it's always like, what are they bringing to the table? Why are they Taviran? What are their powers? Why are they significant enough that we need to follow them? Well, Perrin, immediately we start to see he has this connection with wolves. He can do the wolf streams. He's got, super sort of senses. It seems like tied. He can smell. He can communicate with wolf packs.
He's also just generally really strong.
Really strong, capable. Yeah. So he's starting to develop into like what I think is like a considerable force, right? This is the first time where we've like spent some time with Matt now, who we've been hearing as Taviran, but like he's kind of been sidelined for most of the series. But now we're starting to see he's blown the horn, which we knew about. But like this luck thing really starts to come into play. Like he's always been lucky. But this is a whole different kind of luck.
I thought it was going to be like he's lucky some of the time. He's lucky all of the time. And I'm like, it's like fun because
the first
he was
night where he's betting, like he doesn't ever lose.
Right. He it was a gambler like already. And that's like the thing that it goes into. And I like that there's an interesting distinction about like he's really good with like random chance. It's like rolling the dice versus like cards or something else like that. Like there's a distinction there.
If there's like strategy involved, then it reduces the amount of luck involved. Then he has the potential to like make mistakes. But the more he can rely on pure luck, the better he'll do.
But I do like the way that Jordan ties this into his fighting prowess, because we see him
it's not
go up
just
against
like rolling dice. Like this affects everything in his life, and including when he's fighting people.
We see him fight these guys, and he just has a quarterstaff, and he's fighting these it's Elaine's brothers.
Yeah.
And they seem like fairly capable.
Yeah.
Like they're training to be warders.
They're training to be warders. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he comes in and just smokes them. And like even with how weak he was after just being healed and everything like that.
And it's partially, I think, because he like bets on it. I don't know. That's my theory, because like it's clear that this is like tied to his luck, and so it seems like whenever he like puts a wager down, he's like activated his luck a little bit now. He is a good fighter, but clearly something else is going on here too.
In the book, the little stamp at the beginning of the chapter of him is like dice. And it's like, all right, so that's what this character is he's all about taking chances and rolling the dice, and he like gets into fights sometimes and he's like, time to roll the dice and stuff, and he's like, I'm like, all right, I like this.
Yeah.
This stuff.
And he gets, at one point he's running on the rooftops. He's getting pursued by these, I think, dark friends, and he decides to just grab the guy and jump off the roof with him. And when he does, he like lands on the ground, and he's like, oh, I thought maybe I'd land on top of him, but he also like his dagger's in the guy's heart, as he gets up and he's like, oh, okay, I guess I killed him. So it's like, it's affecting his ability to fight and stuff too. He's just super lucky. And I thought this was always a really interesting sort of power to have, this ability to just be super lucky, because like on its surface, I don't know, it seems pretty powerful, but like when you really get into it, it's like quite powerful actually.
Well, it reminds me of like if you stat into like Fallout, or if you're statting like creating a character in like D&D or something like that. If you're adding into like, if there's a luck section, usually that luck section can be pretty broken if you really stat into it hard.
And his is
at
100 from the jump.
Yeah, his is maxed out.
After he wakes up from this, at least.
Yeah, and it's cool that he's like trying to figure out if it's tied to like him being healed by the Aes Sedai, which I don't think it is. It's clearly somehow tied to the dagger in some way, and his Ta'veren nature, I would say.
There's also a couple of hints, and I don't want to go too far into it because I don't want to like give away stuff that might be more clearly out in future books. But I feel like there's a few times where we see him in particular remembering things that he shouldn't know, right? Like he's like accessing other knowledge.
When he's being healed, it's talked a lot about like Manethera. I think it's what it's called, right? Manethera.
Yeah, it's like, I think this is the place that the two rivers used to be before, like long ago.
The wars,
like the kingdom before it
fell.
And
I think like he has like some battle cries, and he's seeing some flashes of like him leading charges and stuff like that, which like, you know, in a fantasy story in general, you could see that as him just like sort of like getting a flash of history or this or that. But then you're like, okay, well, this is Wheel of Time, and they're talking about reincarnations and like, you know, so this could be him in the future. It could be him in a past life. And that's all kind of the same thing in Wheel of Time as far as I've been able to suss out.
Sure.
So, but it's cool to see like that all being touched on. And then, he's speaking like this old tongue as he's being like, that dagger is being like broken from him. He's like speaking in this old tongue, and like, I think some of the characters can translate it, and it's like charged falcons or something like that, like red falcons, and like that's all stuff that like, I feel like if you're reading for the second time through the series, you're probably like, holy shit, that's fucking cool. Cause I'm sure it's going to tie in somewhere.
Well, there's a lot of prophecies about all of our characters too, that we're hearing here. And like, as someone who's read through the series, it's like, it's really interesting, but like I don't know how much to highlight each of them. But we hear prophecies about Rand, we hear prophecies about Perrin, we hear prophecies about Matt. Really, all of them. Like we see prophecies with Egwene, you know, like all of this, and it's interesting to like having full knowledge. Although I haven't actually finished the series, so I will fully grant I haven't read the last book, I think. Maybe
once we get to like season 10,
then I'll finish it.
We'll have finished it all.
So I don't know how it like finally ends up, but still, I know most of this stuff and like can figure out like what he's hinting at, and he does it in playful ways. I still particularly love the way George R. R. Martin does prophecy, but I like the way Robert Jordan does it too, and it's kind of similar in some ways. Like it's a lot of like, it's gonna come true, but it's not gonna be in the way you expect, right? And both of them do this really well. I think, and we definitely get some of that here.
I think that's the stuff that you get invested in as a fan. Like you're like, I remember this scene, and then like when it comes to fruition, like you're gonna feel really like
you're like, oh yeah, it's that
elated
thing that was mentioned. Yeah, that's always fun. We get a couple other characters that I'm gonna touch on briefly here. We get Queen Morghese is introduced as Matt like lucks his way into finding her. He climbs the wall, and then he just like wanders through the hallways. And it was so funny because there was a couple of times, like I think it's this one where he falls into the garden, and then he walks into the hallway, and then he comes upon this Lord Gabriel character like talking about some Dark Friend shit.
Yeah,
like
talking about killing Elaine.
Yeah,
and
he just
Elaine
walks
killed.
in and here's it. I'm like, oh, that's awfully convenient. And whenever I have that thought, I'm always like, fucking Robert Jordan,
Matt.
Because it's Matt. He could do whatever he wants. He can just get super lucky and walk up on a conversation like that because that's Matt's power.
I think the Queen, we have met the Queen before because Rand met her previously. But
that might be true. Yeah,
she's like like her as a player though. She starts to be like because she's involved with like the Aes Sedai at this point, like she's like gone. She went to the tower.
Elaine's mother.
Elaine wasn't there. She was pissed, and she was like, "Well, bring my fucking daughter back. We're getting her out of here right away." And then there were some negotiations as far as like Elaine being able to stay, and then her son staying to continue to be warders and to protect Elaine when she returns. Anyway, this is why Matt is there, is to deliver a letter from Elaine to Morghese. And it's kind of wild how it all comes together. And then the other thing that I want to say about the series is so funny is that like everyone's a fucking Dark Friend.
Yeah,
like, you're just like anywhere you turn, you're like.
Well, Gabriel specifically is one of the Forsaken.
Yeah, we do learn that. Yeah, but the whole time you're like, oh, new person at an inn, Dark Friend.
Yeah.
But like I'm always like skeptical, and maybe that's what how he wants you to feel, because that's how the characters need to feel when they're meeting new people. But yeah, a lot of dark friends in this story, and you know, within the dreams as well. You're like, if you're meeting somebody and they're like described what they're wearing, I'm like, Forsaken.
Yeah.
Definitely Forsaken. Definitely dark friend.
I feel like
Forsaken.
there is a lot of Forsaken in the dreams that he's always so coy with it too, like just kind of describing. So often I feel like it's Lanfear, right? Like it's beautiful woman, you know, she kind of seems like she's on like doing her own thing a little bit. Like maybe it's kind of with the shadow, but also she's kind of in it for herself.
Well, I think we see a conversation that like Rand overhears at one point where like Lanfear and Balsamon are having an argument or something like that. And like she does seem like he's like, do you serve me or whatever? And they go back and forth a little bit. And then at the end of the story, we're getting like Lanfear leaves a letter with Moiraine and says like, take care of Rand, or take care of, she calls him Luz Theron.
Yeah.
Luz Theron Telamon.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, well, we've known for a while that like Rand is the reincarnation of the dragon, obviously.
She's such an interesting character. She's like one of my favorites, Forsaken for sure, because she is kind of in it for herself. She's definitely evil, but she's got this like, she's like in love with a previous version of Rand. So she has this weird relationship with him now, where she kind of sees him as Luz Theron, who she was in love with. And so she always has these like battling loyalties. And I love that. I love the way she's portrayed in the show. I remember that I was really fond of that, and like, so this makes me really excited to get more of her.
I can't wait to see what this season has in store, especially because they're doing so much story. We're gonna get to continue to read, and I do love that as well, because when we first read Eye of the World, I was like, I want to continue, and we had to hold off, and now I get to read 2 books back to back. So I'm very excited for
Fire
our
hose is on.
Upcoming coverage.
So Tom Maryland,
Yes.
he's back.
Yep.
He was a favorite from the first book.
I think we thought he was gone, right? I'm pretty sure we thought he was dead, and then
they pretended like he was dead at one point. I don't know if we knew. I feel like maybe we knew, because there was something with like him and this woman who died, I think, in the last book.
Yeah,
I want to say that happened. So I think we knew he was alive, but it's cool to see him back with one of our main characters, right? With Matt.
Well, specifically Matt, because like the relationship of like Tom, Rand, and Matt in like the early book, like they're traveling together, and and maybe he will, but they keep like having Tom be this kind of like really like grounded street level guy that I kept being early on. I was like, oh, this guy's gonna be like some kind of crazy powerful mage or something, but that hasn't come out. And
there is something mysterious about his past, though, right? Like they keep hinting a lot about him, like knowing a lot about like courtly politics, and
he says that he loved Moiraine, I think. No, not Moiraine. Morgase.
Yeah, Morgase. Yeah,
Morgase.
Yeah, he's got.
But he does think that Moiraine is. He's like, oh, if Moiraine wasn't an Aes Sedai, she's beautiful and all this other stuff. So he's got a thing for the ladies. Yeah, he's got a thing for the ladies.
Like Matt. Sure. Matt constantly thinks that about everybody. Like every time he meets a woman, he's like, I'd ask her to dance if she wasn't a scary person who wants to kill me, you know?
I also think it's funny that he's constantly like, he thinks that he's so bad with the ladies, and like he's like the lucky one. And then
that's an ongoing joke throughout the entire series, I think. And we get continued here where each character always thinks about how the other is like a parent thinks, oh, I wish I was Rand, or I wish I was Matt. He knows how to talk to women. They all think that about each other.
It's pretty funny. I guess you get as like a teenager, right? If that's like what age they're meant to be, or young 20s or something.
You're like, oh, he's so confident. He always knows what to say.
Yeah, they're just faking it, and they're just going about their lives. And then like the classic things of like Lanfear shows up and Matt's totally nude, and he's like, oh, I gotta cover myself up with a blanket, and it, like plenty of stuff like that.
There's a lot of that. A lot of characters being naked at surprising times. I mean, hey, got to keep it interesting for a big series, I guess. All right, so let's move into the final bit of plot here, and then we can kind of wrap our thoughts on this entire book, and we can unlock everything. So, in Tyr, Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine are unwillingly betrayed by Julian Sandar, a thief catcher, who was under the influence of a form of compulsion from Liandrin, to the Black Aja, and then imprisoned in the Stone of Tyr, where they are rescued by Matt and a repentant Julian. Fael falls into a Black Aja trap meant for Moiraine, and Perrin risks his life into the world of dreams to save her. Rand and the Forsaken Balal duel in the Stone of Tyr. Moiraine interrupts the battle and kills Balal with balefire. Baalzamon appears, disables Moiraine, and attacks Rand. Rand takes Kalendor, proving himself the Dragon Reborn, and with it kills Baalzamon. Rand thinks he has killed the Dark One, who he believes was Baalzamon, But Moraine tells him that the Dark One is not human, and therefore cannot have been Balsamon, because Balsamon left behind a corpse. Egwene, remembering a parchment of prophecy that Varen Sedai showed her, instead deduces that the corpse is possibly Ishamael, chief among the Forsaken. The Aiel in Tyr take the stone and reveal themselves as the people of the dragon. All right, so that's a big reveal. That's something we've talked about a lot in the first book. And is this actually the Dark One, this Balsamon figure? Yeah, but the sort of reveal here is that probably Ishamael.
And I think the show led me to believe that too.
Yeah.
I think the show kind of had already telegraphed that a little bit so that I was ready for this in the book. But very cool that like we got that confirmed. And it seems that like there's multiple Forsaken, I think, that we've seen just gone now and dead.
Yeah, I think there are two of them there's like two that get killed at the Eye of the World.
Yeah, and then maybe one in
Bilal has now been killed. So I think we've killed.
So is it just the three? Okay,
I think it's just three. Yeah.
There's like the 7 sealed that's talked about, and like they're all kind of built into it. And as the seal gets weaker, they come out.
So it seems like some of them are like newly getting released, right?
Right. So there's quite a few that are, popping around, and so that's why we see them in dreams fairly often. But the Aiel stuff is a really cool addition to the story, because we also got some of this in season 2 where like Perrin releases one of the Aiel from a cage. Yeah. And I didn't know where that was going.
Do you remember
obviously.
who it was in the show?
I can't remember the name.
Avienda.
Okay.
Who we meet in this book in a very different situation.
Yeah, not from Perrin's perspective, from Egwene's
She meets Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine together.
Yeah. It's cool to know the reveal also is like confirmed that like Rand is most likely Aiel, and we've kind of, I think the show we've seen some of that as well.
There's a bunch of prophecies around the Dragon Aiel. Reborn and the Aiel.
Yeah. Group. When they'll leave their land and
so that's what we learned. When the Dragon Reborn arrives, they're going to leave the threefold land and leave the waste.
And now they've come to Tyr, and they've taken Tyr, and they're the dragon's people, which was cool at the end. And they just seem like very cool. Like I think of them in the way that I think of like in George R.R. Martin's like Song of Ice and Fire, how different it is in like Westeros and Essos. Like they almost seem like they're from another area, and like they have their own culture, their own everything that's like totally developed differently than this main area that
I
we've
can't
seen.
stop thinking of them as the Fremen. I think they're very clearly influenced by Frank Herbert's Dune. I think they are basically the Fremen.
Yeah, I like that. They're cool. They're like very fast, great warriors. Yep. I like the culture that they've built up of like the spear maidens. Like they're all like
they've never seen this much water, right? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, totally. And so like seeing all of that come all the way around, and now the Aiel being like out because like so few of them had been seen in like the main world for hundreds of years or whatever. Now they're all here, and they have this big battle at the end where Rand is around. And then like, this is like now two books in a row where like Rand has this like epic, maybe 3, I guess, if you count Eye of the Worlds as well, but there's like this big confrontation, big epic battle at the end, and Rand battles some form of Balsamon, whether that's his Forsaken or whatever that is. Yeah. And so, and like, it seems that he's like 1-to-1 fighting with Balsamon, and Balsamon maybe even like inhabited Ishamael at one point, and then left the body as he killed him or whatever.
Yeah.
But
well, he gets Kalendor, which is part of the prophecy. But so at the end of the book, he's sort of proven that he's the Dragon Reborn again, because he's already done that, right?
Yeah, reluctantly as per usual, right? Like he doesn't want to take the sword. He doesn't know that he totally is. And then when push comes to shove, he runs up and grabs it and like protects the people.
So putting our like adaptation hats on, we can kind of understand, I think, why maybe this was considered the plot being kind of similar to the previous book, and they thought they could kind of roll it in and like kind of get through a lot of these details. Like there's a lot that happens in here that moves along character storylines, stuff with Tar Valon, stuff that develops Perrin and his ability with the dream world, Egwene and her ability with the dream world. But ultimately with Rand, he's kind of doing the same thing. Yes, he gets the sword, which I'm curious to see if we get this in the show or not. But I don't think he has Kalendor yet in the show.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. So Kalendor, the sword that isn't a sword, but like it seems to be like a thing that boosts his power, right? Like his ability to channel.
Yeah. Well, they say it's a
Sa'angreal.
Yeah, Sa'angreal, which is the most powerful, right? There's Ungreal, Sa'angreal, and Ta'angreal.
Terangreal have like a specific purpose, whereas the other one, Ungreal and Sa'angreal, both like just boost your power. And then I don't know if there are different names for the ones that affect men and women that might be the case. I'm not like 100% sure about that.
Well, Taangriel I know is like that little porcupine thing that affects Fail, I think her name is. Yeah, that is like one of the ones that the Black Aja had stolen, and they got a bunch of those.
Because by the way, like 13 Black Aja left with Leandrin at the head, and they like stole a bunch of shit from the tower, a bunch of different objects, and we learned that there is a thing that the Black Aja can do if there are 13 of them, and that's convert someone against their will into becoming like a dark friend. And so the implication being that they're planning to do this to either Rand or maybe even to like Egwene or Nynaeve or any of them.
Well, she has a vision of that or something, or that's what part of her trial, I think.
Yeah,
when she's becoming accepted.
Yeah. So we now know this is a thing, but that does play also into the PTSD of Egwene in particular about being compelled, right? Like she's had this situation where she was compelled by the Shanshin, and she doesn't. The idea of being compelled to become a dark friend is like that would be the ultimate betrayal to her, and she does not like that idea.
It's pretty wild too that the Shanshin were just like pushed back. It seems temporarily. Like they're definitely a faction that's still floating around.
That's why I couldn't believe they occurred in book 2. Because I knew there was like a period where they didn't really do anything, and like we just hit book 3, and they like didn't do anything in this book.
Well, and that's what you mentioned before, like this being similar to the second book in some sense, and that's why I think Jordan realized that too for Rand specifically. Like it was such a fun. I liked Rand being on the peripheral, and I'm excited to get Rand's POV like hardcore and maybe the next book or the one after that. But like I thought it was so cool to have him on the perimeter and to build up the world in this way and have all these other characters shine. Just to have like the final battle still be very Rand centric and have that be like the big, Dragon Reborn moment.
Yeah. A lot of people kind of look at this book as a book where not a lot develops, and I can see that argument. I think there are things that do, as I've said, but like as far as like the overall plot, does it feel like it moves forward super far? Not really. But we do get it is a time where I think we get to see Matt shine for the first time, Perrin.
Definitely.
So there are lots of things to like in this book.
Yeah, and to highlight them too, like Matt, we've talked a little bit about like his gambling streak in Tarvalon and like how lucky he is and everything like that. But like I see him, like his arc that I'm seeing, I've already kind of touched on it, is him sort of starting to go from what's in it for me to saying like, oh, I overheard that Elaine might be in danger and I'm gonna go chase after these future Aes Sedai. And he doesn't even like Aes Sedai, but he loves like his friends.
Yeah, they're his friends.
They're kind of his found family from back home and everything like that. And so he decides to go with Tom on this adventure. And then Perrin and like he's starting to deal with more of like what I think we've seen a little bit in the show so far, but that's like he doesn't necessarily want to be out in there killing people, and like he's kind of grappling with that and some of the darkness of that.
We talked about how they really brought that to the forefront in the show with some changes to what happens with Perrin and like the first episode. But like clearly this is a long-term challenge for him, is like the push to be violent versus the push to be peaceful, like a creator being drawn to the hammer is what it becomes represented by. Hammer versus the axe, right? Like, am I a fighter or a builder?
Yeah, and I like that he got that scene to like be. He's like. I think ultimately Perrin just wants to be a blacksmith. I think he wants to like craft things and make things really perfect and
be peaceful.
And the Taviran like nature is just like not going to allow that to happen. And that's one thing that this book does set up a lot too with kind of the wake that Rand is leaving behind him is like what the Taviran do to like he goes to villages and everyone gets married in the village and then
like eruption of marriages and
he goes and like people are fighting and killing each other and like the wake that he's leaving behind him is like so that's like really
somebody's
intense.
Daughter fell out a window and fell 100 feet to cobblestones and then like got up and was fine, and like weird stuff like that's happening.
And I think that you're seeing that a little bit with like Perrin and Matt as well, and like the three of them like as they come together, like that being
it accentuates that power.
The three of them are the Taviran, it seems like, not just like a single one of them. They are all Taviran, but like like the three, the trifecta is kind of like what is like gonna push the story along, and like it's cool to see like Matt's gonna be important in the final battle, Rand's gonna be important in the final battle. I bet you Perrin's gonna be important in the final battle too. So it's cool to like see all of that coming together and being set up.
So thoughts on other characters that we see, like Moiraine, her role here. She unleashes some balefire at the end, kills Balal. Pretty badass moment. She says that she's just like learned some more stuff in the intervening time.
Yeah, I was surprised, and I think that maybe is the Taviran influence as well, right? Like everybody's stronger around these Taviran. Everybody's like learning and seeing more. One thing that I'll note too is like we get some information about like the weave of the pattern, and like the way that like we've heard the balefire can like blasts you out of existence, and like the history of your history
can
like,
remove you from the weave,
from the weave. And I'm like, damn, that's like when the whole thing is about like reincarnation and things coming back around, to be like blasted out of that. And like I think Rand at one point gets like a blast of balefire shot at him, and he uses that sword, his what's it called, Kalendor, to like block it. And I'm like, if that hits one of our main characters and pulls them completely out of the weave, that would be devastating to the overall story there.
Yeah, they do a good job of really establishing balefire as quite a powerful piece of magic. We do see magic getting some more rules here. Like we see characters figuring out how to do things. We learned that you can do something where you can like tie off weaves. I don't know if this is a thing that's been approached in other books or not, but like Egwene figures out she can like set up some different weaves and then tie them off so that they like persist.
Yeah, I actually love too the like thematic nature of what she gets to do at the end of the story, where like they're trapped. She kind of is panicking at first. Egwene and Elaine are there to like comfort her, and then she goes into her dream and like on her own, like she's like actively fighting the thing that she fears most, which is being captive. She goes through and like ties off some weaves on the Aes Sedai, the Black Aja that's sitting out front of their cell there. And then I also want to note too, like Nynaeve, one of the funniest things about Nynaeve is that like she's not afraid to just punch a motherfucker in the face. Yeah. Like she's like, we have magic, but I'll still punch you in the face, and I'll use my herbs.
And she kind of has to, because she like can't. She's the only one who like can't really control when she channels. She has to get herself really angry. So there's a couple of scenes that are kind of funny because she's like psyching herself up to get angry. Like, how dare you get injured? Like, she's getting herself angry so that she can heal this person and stuff like that. Like, it's pretty funny.
It's a character that I continue to love. Like, I like Nynaeve a lot.
She has that one scene with the innkeeper herbs woman where they're like throwing down herb knowledge at each other for a while. That's definitely meant to be comedic, I think. It was pretty good.
And I do like that, like they're like a new age of Aes Sedai. It seems like they have these 3 rules that they can't break, and they're not quite Aes Sedai yet, so they can still break. Like they're not. Oh, but we found out that,
Egwene supposedly is not bound by the oaths in the future. That was something that was in that prediction too. She reveals that she somehow is not bound by them.
And that's what I was curious about, is like, I feel like they're a new age. Like we're seeing Nynaeve as a healer. We've seen other Aes Sedai healers. She's still using some of her wisdom, knowledge to like weave into that. And it seems like Egwene is like, yeah, I'm going to be an Aes Sedai, but if they try to, like, there's one point where it said like, if they try to gentle us or something like that, I'm not going out like that and I'll fight. Yeah. And like, that's not very Aes Sedai as far as I've seen the other women.
Well, yeah, it's cool because it's like she recognizes their power and wants to learn from them, but she's not beholden to them, right? She has like other things that she cares about more. It's cool to hear that still is important to them. Yeah, and we see these 3 sort of bond in this book, I think, more closely. Nynaeve, yeah, she continues to be an interesting character. She does the whole thing with like she doesn't need the herbs to do her magic, and yet it's like her tool that she uses to like unlock her magic. But it's funny because it's like she doesn't really need it, but she's like, shut up. Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's both. I like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Moraine, I like that we have Lan, of course, continues to be a super cool character. I love like him sort of being a ranger through the woods, trekking a path, and like all that stuff's always really fun when they're traveling.
Like Stone Eyes or something. What is it? Like Fael calls him something, Stone Face, something like that.
I'm excited to get more from Lan. I like
we hear a little bit about the whole idea that like he might have his bond passed to this green.
Yeah. Yeah, which we got a lot in the show.
We've gotten into the show already. So, like, in some ways, the show has surpassed this book already.
It has, yeah. I feel like we see, like, even in the show, would be something to track in the book as well, is that, and spoiler if you haven't seen the show this far, so, but Moraine, I think, is, like, gentled at the point
she's had her, she's had her ability to channel suppressed at the very least.
Yeah. Which is pretty wild.
Yeah. And that hasn't happened in the book yet, I don't think. Unless it happened in book 2 and I forgot. There's a lot that happens in my defense. And it's been a little while. But yeah, man. So yeah, overall thoughts on this book. And then we can leave this one for now. But like, it was fun for me to revisit. I'll say that. It's a nice refresher. It's always good to kind of get grounded back in the series and see like where we're at with the books before we go into the show. But, you know, admittedly, we are doing some more book next week, which we'll talk about here in a minute. We'll describe what our coverage is going to look like. But yeah, what were your thoughts on book 3, and like maybe where does it rank for you as far as the other books go?
I think book 1 starts out as very familiar. Book 2 is like put us on a quest.
Yeah.
Book 1 is like set up a world, show us characters, powers, things like that.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
it's very like they're all super farm boys at that point, right? Like they're fresh out the rural town where they know nothing, That's very prevalent in the first book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very like original Star Wars. Like farm boy gets brought into something that he wasn't prepared for. Yeah. So like, I like all of that. I think it's a great setup. Obviously, I wanted to continue reading. Book 2, I liked the quest nature of it. It was like we're hunting for this horn, and like where it ended up was really cool. I thought this book was gonna go a really different route. I think this is like a step in the right direction, but it didn't take like a huge step into like the what I think this world can become because it's so long and so beloved. But I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the entire book. I love that. Like the biggest, I think, boon of this book is stepping away from Rand.
Yeah.
Letting all these other characters shine.
Agreed.
Showing like Rand is still important and he's still a cool character. I still like Rand, but like having all these other characters shine, I think in the future is going to pay dividends. And now we're in a situation where like I can't wait to read book 4 and see like what, especially with how this book leads off, where it's like the next book's called The Shadow Rising. The seals are breaking. Moraine's getting letters from Lanfear. Like there's a lot of stuff that's being set up here. I think a lot of characters, we can see the path that they're heading on, and like who knows where that's going to take us.
Yeah. What do you think for the path for like Perrin and Matt are? Where do you think they're going in the future books here, or maybe even just the next book?
Perrin very clearly, like using like the context of what we just saw him in, he's going to be very tied to this woman. I think that we're going to see their relationship grow. I think she's an interesting character. I'd like to get more from her. I think like mostly what we've gotten from her is that like she was kind of fearless. And then it got to a point where she was like, "Oh, you guys are wrapped up."
The idea of stories, right? Like she's living a story. Yeah. She's a hunter for the horn. She keeps thinking like, "Oh, now I'm part of this story. That's like the most important story."
It was crazy all the detail. Like Moraine kept giving her an out too, like saying like, "You can leave if you want. You can leave if you want. Just trust me, it's gonna get big." And then like she kept getting these big reveals, like, "Oh, the hunt for the horn's over."
Yeah.
Like so, like your whole quest in life currently is over. And like, but she's hearing all this other stuff that they're wrapped up in, and she sticks around and then is a victim to the Black Aja. And then I love that Perrin like goes in and kind of faces what he's been struggling with, which is like his bond to the wolves, like I mentioned before, and like he embraces it more, and he's like, "Come on, Hopper, let's go fucking save this girl that I kind of like." And how that all ends up is really cool. And he takes like a big hit. I think he like is really injured at the end of the book after he's like saved her, and I like where that was going.
So it's notable that Fael has not been introduced yet in the show. I don't know. I honestly don't remember because I don't follow the casting news super closely, and I think people have questioned whether or not this is a character that will be combined with another character, or if she will be Fael on her own. Like, and like, there's a lot of, I think, worry about this and what they're going to do. And like, if they do end up giving her role to another character, how's that going to play? And we know that like there's a kind of economy of characters that always happens in TV show adaptations. You just can't have as many. So this could happen, but I'll be curious to see if they do. I guess I don't really know how I feel about it. I think it could work, but I also would. Yeah, obviously it kind of sucks to lose a character.
I think it's all tainted too by like what they did with Perrin early on, which like I wasn't even like a massive fan yet. I was like starting to get invested in just the first book, but to have him already have a lost wife is like so much baggage that you then have to bring into another relationship that he begins to develop with anybody else.
And he's died by his own hand.
Yeah.
It's crazy traumatic thing that happened in the show. Yeah,
there's a lot to that. So I think seeing Perrin going forward, I'd like to see him kind of like develop and be more confident and like but like I don't really know that they've given him like a straight up path that he's gonna be, that I can see what he's gonna do next. I think that like I would like to see all of them together again.
The Shanshan are definitely a looming threat, right? But I think one other one that you can identify here, especially much more prevalent in the start of the book, but the Children of the Light get a little more attention here.
You're totally right. Yeah, that is kind of what he has going on, because they're hunting him. They keep talking to there's like a couple of like figures in the Children of the Light that are like, Perrin we got to fucking get this guy. It's his fault. All of this is his fault. So he's probably got that to deal with on the other end. Matt, it seems like he finally gets to be a little bit of a hero in an interesting way that he didn't necessarily expect. But I want to see him group back up with. He seems like at the end of the book, he's like, all right, it's cool that I helped and everything like that, but I want to get the fuck out of here with Tom and like go do whatever I want. And
he did have that moment where he saves them, and it was definitely kind of played for comedy, where he like saves them and they're all like grumpy with him, and he's like, what the fuck? I just saved you. But it kind of made sense too, because all the the situation, they were kind of in the process of saving themselves, and he just shows up and helps them out. But then he's also with that thief catcher, who, by the way, I think is a cool character. And it was interesting to see how he betrays them, but then he's not betraying them because he's a dark friend. he betrays them because he
compelled.
thinks that well, for one, he's compelled, and then also like he had no real way to resist it. Yeah,
Must have been Leandrin, I think, or Lanfear.
Yeah.
Somebody compelled
Leandrin,
him,
I think,
and that was like a power that we know that the Black Aja, or maybe all Aja, have.
Yeah,
but they
compulsion.
specifically can like force people to do things against their will.
Yeah, so we're learning about more powers, more avenues to use the magic. Very cool. It does feel like I could really see, like when I first heard that they were kind of skipping book 3 and going to book 4, I was like, how are they going to do this? But I'm realizing that like even if we don't have a lot of the same events, there's a lot of character development and stuff here that you can bring into other plot lines and like still make sure you're touching on. So I can see why maybe they're doing it, because ultimately, like, what do we have, like 15 books? You're not going to have 15 seasons. We're just not going to have that. Nobody's going to do that. They're not going to be able to stay. They're not like Amazon isn't going to renew them that many times. The actors aren't going to want to stick around that long. It's just too much, right? So like I don't know, 7 or 8 seasons is probably about the most we can hope for. Maybe we get 8 or 9, or I don't know, man. That's still asking a lot. So unfortunately, we are going to have to get a lot of condensing in the show, and that's just the reality of this adaptation. And that's one of the things that makes it so challenging. It's such a big undertaking for Rafe Judkins to try and figure out how to do this.
Yeah, and I do think like we've been seeing the show kind of find its footing and like get to where it needs to be and like line the pieces up. But I'd be excited. I want to see Matt like get to shine like he does in this book. I want that. I don't want to lose that plot line. I want to see Perrin continue to develop. But yeah, I do think like they can cover a lot of what happens in this book in a few episodes, and just hopefully they develop the characters enough to where we're going along with it and it's like organic. But like, I mean, ultimately like Rand getting Kalendor, like, and like all the Battle of Tyr and everything that happens at that final confrontation, that could be an episode.
That could be an episode.
And then,
yep.
Move along from there.
I'll be curious to see how much Dreamworld stuff we get, right? Because that's something we've gotten tastes of, but like, I don't think we've been seeing people like enter the Dreamworld on purpose with like missions to do, and it's been a lot more of just like the Forsaken come in to like taunt Rand and stuff, right? Talk to Rand in his dreams, or Perrin, but like. I hope that this season we're gonna start to explore the dream world as an actual thing you can do, like a space you can operate in.
Yeah,
that'll be.
I mean, it's a tall task. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's going to be difficult to pull off and make it satisfying for fans and people who aren't familiar with the lore. But I do think that it's.
Do you think we're going to get a flying
where...
Hopper at any point? I want to see Hopper just take off into the fucking
Dude,
sky.
I hope so. I mean, I'm like, that's what we signed up for, and that's what we need.
All right, so obviously we're having to leave a lot, undiscussed here, but it's a big book. This is our way to tackle this thing. Our plan for coverage for this, real quick, is we're going to do approximately half, maybe a little more than half, of The Shadow Rising next week. So we're doing another book episode next week. But that's to set us up to where we can then, the following week, cover the first 5 episodes of the Wheel of Time show, and then we'll be rounding out our month-ish long coverage with a final episode where we come in and we talk about the second half, or third or so, of The Shadow Rising and the rest of season 3 of the show combined, and we kind of react to everything together. That way we can sort of preserve knowledge of what happens till the very end. That's our plan for our coverage. That means we're going to be in this world doing Wheel of Time stuff for about a month, and we hope you join us for the entire journey, because it's kind of a lot. It's a difficult one to tackle for us, but we just love it so much we felt like we had to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so if you enjoyed this episode and you're excited about our Wheel of Time coverage, let us know in the form of a rating and review on whatever app you chose to listen to. If you're on audio, if you're on video, make sure to like the video on YouTube, subscribe, and maybe ring that bell, as they say, to where you actually get notified. I guess it is actually quite important for YouTube, because they love to not show you videos even for channels you're subscribed to. So that's a little frustrating. So I guess it's a way to make sure that you find out whenever our new episodes come out.
We super appreciate that. And be sure to follow us on social media: Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, anywhere you can look, at Ink to Film. And if you'd like to, we have a Discord where we discuss really everything that goes on in film, books, just like generally show us your pets, things like that.
Yeah.
If you want to join our Discord server, just send us a message on any platform, or inktofilm@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to support this podcast in another way, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/inktofilm. On there, we release bonus episodes. You can look for an episode about the Herzog Nosferatu, which should be out very soon, if not already out by the time you hear this. And then we do one every month. So we'd love to have you over there. get your support. You can also look at different tiers where there's merch and different things like that. But for as little as $2, you can get those bonus episodes. So we'd love to have your support, and that's on Patreon. All right, that's going to be it for The Dragon Reborn, Book 3 of The Wheel of Time. We will be back to talk about Book 4 a little bit. But man, this is fun. I'm glad we're back to it. And thank you all for joining us. So until next time,
keep adapting.